Welcome to the Mike Hewitt Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and today my guest is Angela Rigas. Am I saying it right?
Yes, Rigas.
And you're a candidate for state representative.
I am. I'm challenging the incumbent in the 86th district for the House seat.
Okay.
I'm a Republican. I'm challenging the incumbent because we need to bring back a true public servant to the district and to the state of Michigan.
Okay.
We need to bring common sense back to Michigan.
Tell me, I want to talk way more about you today
Okay.
than her, but before I move on from that comment, what causes you to say she's not what is she instead of a public servant?
She's a politician.
Okay, and you're not.
No, I am not a politician. I'm married. I'm a small business owner. I have 4 children, Peyton, Harrison, Warner, and Maverick's no longer with us. And I'm a member of the NRA, and I'm a board member of Little League. I'm an ordinary citizen, and I have had no voice in Lansing.
Right. So anyone that watches this show or knows me personally knows that I own a gun shop. So when a candidate starts out with, I'm a member of the NRA, you got to know I smile a little bit.
Well, yeah, and I'm a member of the NAGR too.
Okay.
And I like them. I like them very much.
Yep, and then to say it again.
NAGR.
What does that stand for?
National Association for Gun Rights.
Okay, how
It's
about
more of a grassroots organization.
Anything to do with what is it, Guns of America?
No.
No, you know them or no?
No.
Nope. Okay, there's a bunch of them. Are there? Let's get back to the race itself.
Sure.
You're a Republican.
Yes.
You're a primary challenger, and you don't have a whole bunch in common with your Republican opponent.
I do not.
Not too much.
No.
What are the difference in issues?
First of all, Common Core education is a huge topic,
Okay.
and I would like to see local control brought back to the schools. Right now, we're just having a takeover of education, and it's a one-size-fits-all education.
Right.
And as us parents know, not everyone learns the same or tests the same, and we really need to bring back local control and put the education back in the hands of the teachers, because they're on the front lines of education every day. They know our children and how they learn,
Right.
and Common Core ties the hands of the teachers.
You know what's unfortunate for, and myself included, by the way, but for most people, is that there's back and forth push on Common Core, but I don't hear a lot of people articulating what's wrong with Common Core. A lot of people say I love it or I don't like it, but for instance, you said it was a government takeover of education.
Sure, it's tied by funding.
Tied by funding.
Federal funding.
Federal funding, because they sell it as a state organization or a state
Yes.
chartered organization.
Yes.
But you're saying it's tied to federal funding.
Yes.
So,
The amount of funding is actually very small that's tied to
Right.
Common Core.
right,
But they do, whenever you get the federal government involved in any sort of funding,
right.
you let them in to take control.
Yeah, but I think, first off, I agree with you, and I agree with your position, by the way. Let me make an upfront disclosure on that. But at the same time, if one of my daughters, I've got 4 adult daughters, and if one of them comes to me and says, Dad, can I borrow or have 100 or 1,000 or whatever, I've really, really tried hard to stay out of their business because they're adults and they're married and they've got children of their own.
Right.
But when they ask me for money, now I get to say, what are you going to do with it and why?
Sure.
And how come you didn't save it up your own self, by the way? Being a little bit of a Dave Ramsey guy, I think, how come this is? So I tell you that part just as a little inset, that when the state looks to the federal government to get some of that dough, they know going in that they're going to lose some of their sovereignty in decision making.
Right.
And some of them, by the way, like that. They support having a centralized educational structure.
And I can understand, obviously we need standards, but I wouldn't go so far to say we need national standards. If you look at the different communities, some of the inner cities,
Right.
you can't expect those kids to learn the same material in the same manner as the children out in the rural communities. And children come from different backgrounds. They
Sure.
come from different lifestyles at home.
Right.
Unfortunately, we have too many children living in a one-parent home,
Right.
and too many kids going home to no parents at all.
You know what's fascinating about that? Because you're right. What's fascinating, though, is that the folks that are pushing Common Core often or mostly are the same people that will talk about our need to be multicultural and recognize different ethnicities and different different races and different, keep it, and what they push, by the way, I'm against all that. To me, they're trying to keep everyone separated into little voter blocks that are easy to control, rather than to assimilate and have all of our immigrants be like my great-grandparents were. And they came here desperately wanting to be American,
Sure.
not wanting to be separate. But the reason I bring that up is that Common Core does the opposite of what they're saying they're wanting. They're wanting to keep everyone broken up into groups, and they do, okay? But at the same time, then they, to your point, they come up with education that suggests that the educational needs, and I've used Shreveport, Louisiana as an example, or Mountain Home, Arkansas, or Crystal Lake, Illinois. They have the same needs as Detroit or Muskegon or Grand Haven. You go, wait a minute, no, they don't.
Yeah.
And they ought not to, by the way.
Right.
They've got different lives. I mean, I'm not going to grow up to be a fisherman,
Right.
but they may have a different set of needs that are needed. Am I thinking right?
It is correct. It is correct. And there's just a lot of standardized testing involved also.
Right.
And my oldest, he's a very smart, bright boy. He doesn't seem to test well.
Okay.
And I don't want everything to be I don't want too much emphasis on standardized testing,
Okay.
because eventually the teachers will start teaching to the test. And right now we really don't know what's in the test
Right.
until the children take it. So I've opted my children out of the standardized testing for Common Core.
Okay. Good.
They data mine your children, they track everything.
I like just say no.
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I got to tell you on that point, though, before I got into Renegade Rivers, the gun shop, and started doing the show and all that, I used to hire a lot of people. And one of the things that was most frustrating is when I would hire an employee, a young person, before I could teach them their job, I had to teach them how to learn. Because up until then, if they were 18, 19, 20, they'd been taught to memorize, but absent of any critical thinking. And
Sure.
critical thinking comes from not memorizing it for Friday's tests, but being able to associate to it and get your hands on it.
Yeah. He
And-
was trained, not taught.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. So what's the fix? If Common Core isn't the answer, what do you think the answer is,
Local
Angela?
control.
Okay, school
Local-
boards?
Yeah, local control
Okay.
of our schools
It's
at the
an in-
local level. I would like input from the teachers. And one thing I had said, when I am elected, before I vote on anything, any sort of education bill, I will meet with the districts. And by the districts, I'm referring to the actual teachers, not the administrators, but the teachers.
The people that are actually teaching.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
amazing that everyone wants to leave them out of the equation.
they're number one.
Right.
They're number one in our education, and
Right.
they are treated terribly.
One of the things I think we've gotten as we've moved with Jimmy Carter, et cetera, moving us towards a centralized educational system, is that when I was young and used to go to a PTA meeting or to the school board meeting, when I was very young, by the way, they were pretty attended. Now when you go there, there's 3 or 4 parents that are angry over, and I've talked about this before on the air, but somebody's youngster got in trouble and the parents are there to defend the youngster rather than, and I could never get my head past that thought, but the school boards themselves are working on non-educational issues.
Sure.
Where do we invest the booster money? Where do we, but listen, that's the response to the government taking over education.
I was just going to say that. If you take away the local control of the schools,
Right.
the local people of the community are not going to feel vested in the school system. So therefore, you are going to have a lower turnout.
They have no skin in the game.
Why should they be invested if their voice
So-
isn't going to be heard?
Now, if
And
I'm going to go there and I'm sitting in front of a school board and they're talking about where do we keep our money in Merrill Lynch or do we move it somewhere else? And by the way, who's handling the booster fund this week?
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute. I thought we were going to talk about education. Aren't you the school board?
right.
So the more they've glommed responsibility from people, rather than, to me, this is me, rather than people demanding that responsibility back, they're moving on to the other obstacles in their life.
Right. Well,
But
and
I
there's
think
so
kids are
many
s-
obstacles.
There are, but I think kids are suffering.
Kids
They-
are suffering. And a big mistake some parents make also is school is not daycare. Too many parents pass their children off to school
Sure.
and expect the schools to raise them.
Right, but when school's over with, then the children become the ward of the refrigerator and the game
Sure.
and the electronic games.
And causing trouble out in the streets.
Oh, yeah.
And, And that comes from like the breakdown of the family, and we need strong families. We need
Right.
strong families in Michigan because the strong family they're the people that sit down with their children and do the homework and listen to their kids, and they know what's going on with their children's lives. And we
Right.
all need to be doing that every day as parents because we see in the news what happens when we do not take care of our children properly. They commit crimes. They don't succeed in life. And that's such a shame because they are the future of our nation.
So you're telling me that Representative Rigas would do everything in her power to try to push education back to the local level?
That is
Parents,
correct.
parents, teachers, and school
That is
boards.
correct. That
Okay.
is correct. And
Okay.
I feel that if the control was restored locally, that the people of the communities would take more ownership of their schools and neighborhoods. And I think that's the winning way to go.
I think you're right. Tell us in fact, I should have started with this. Where is the 86th district? What area does it take in?
Lowell, Virgins Township, Caledonia, Cascade. Sorry, I'm picturing the map in my
Sure.
head.
Oh, yeah.
Grattan, Belding, the city of Ionia, and Bound Township, which is right next to Caledonia Township, and then small portions of Ionia.
Okay,
four
so that's
townships.
just a minute, because I'm not a big GR, but I don't spend a lot of time over there. That's south of Grand Rapids?
Southeast.
Southeast of Grand
Yes.
Rapids? Okay. How long did it take you to get here today?
About 47 minutes.
Okay, that's not terrible.
No, not bad.
Okay, I'm glad you made the trip.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Let's move away from Common Core a little bit. What I'm hoping to do while we're talking today is we'll go through some of the things that all of the candidates are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Then as we develop the show, I'm wanting listeners and viewers to get a better feel for how you would legislate. So we'll just, once we get through the things we kind of got to talk about, next on my we got to talk about list is the Detroit Pension Fund bailout. Where are you on that? Would you have voted for it or against it?
I wouldn't have voted for it. I
Okay.
don't think that failures in Detroit from bad leadership have to fall on the backs of the taxpayers.
Okay. Is there a solution to the problem? Well, let me ask this. Do you think that there's a problem that needs a solution?
Stop voting Democrat.
Okay. So you're kind of saying Detroit voted its way into that.
After all the years of failed leadership,
All right.
this didn't happen overnight. Detroit didn't fall overnight. This was
Yeah.
many, many years of corruption and waste. And like we go back to local control, nobody really took ownership of
Right.
Detroit.
Right. When I look at the problem, I grew up over in that area, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
not in Detroit, but a little bit north of there. When I look at it, I want to take about 20 seconds to tell you my view. Tell me if I'm nuts or not, and don't be shy. Okay. I think that the folks down there that we're talking about were city employees. So there were public works people, they were police officers and firemen primarily. They negotiated for a contract that called for a pension. Okay. I think the city of Detroit owes those people.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't necessarily think that those three groups of public workers in of themselves caused that city government to be what it was. I think a lot of them, a fair number of them, thought, holy moly, we're in trouble, probably a long time ago. Nevertheless, I think the city of Detroit does owe them that. They negotiated for it. They shook their hands. They signed
Right.
contracts. They said, we're going to do this in lieu of paying you more money. We're going to contribute to a pension fund. Okay. Then that pension fund got absconded with and borrowed, and just the people put more money in it. It was a very well-funded pension at one point.
Right.
That money kind of got glommed. So I think the city in total owes them. But then and everyone says, oh, not Mike, not the artwork. Yes, the artwork. And yes, the train station. And yes, anything that city has in the form of assets should be liquidated, in my view, before the city of Detroit or Governor O'Snyder looks to the tax-paying workers of Michigan who largely don't have a pension to pay for those people's pension.
I agree.
Am I wrong?
No, I completely agree with you.
But I do think they're owed the money.
They are owed
Just
the
I
money.
don't
It was
feel
an
I owe it
agreement.
to 'em.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know it. Somebody owes it, but it's not me.
Right.
So to me, it's equatable to say you owe Oscar $100 and you point a gun in my face and say, pay Oscar. Well, I don't know Oscar. You do.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
they need to pay the pensions. They agreed upon it.
Sorry,
The
Oscar.
contracts. The contracts were there. However, again, not on the backs of the taxpayers.
Right.
You find other common sense solutions.
It's interesting. I don't want to go too far down this path, but I heard on the radio yesterday, midweek, that Flint is now talking about a bankruptcy also. So they went through this Governor Snyder's emergency manager, and clearly that worked well for Detroit. And then they've done it to Flint. They've done it to a number of the larger cities, but they're not actually solving the problems. They're going in and they're making the numbers look good on a static worksheet, and they're going, okay, we're done. Now let's file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, do we really, really want to keep doing this as a state?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how to stop it, and I don't really have a question for you. So we're just shooting a breeze here, but to me, it's wrong-headed thinking on the part of our government.
It is. It's an easy way out for bad leadership and bad choices and corruption. And
I think that's exactly right. And by the way, to your original point, when I mentioned me growing up in that area, I remember being a young person watching Mayor Coleman Young, and this guy was an absolute thief, bold-faced lying thief. He really was. And if they could dig him up and bring him back to life, they'd reelect him again. Yeah. And I go, wait a minute, come on, stop that. That makes me not in a big hurry to say, get my checkbook out.
Well, look at Obama. He was reelected.
Yeah, very good point. A lot of folks like that, though. I just can't get my head around it.
I can't either.
Just next light, I don't know how much time we've got to talk about the next issue. Oscar, how much time we got? 2 minutes, so we're not going to get real deep. But we'll give a taste before we get further into it. Recently, we had the minimum wage hike put in, which calls for, over a period of time, a 20% wage hike in minimum wage. What say you?
I don't feel it's the state's job to force businesses to pay a certain wage.
Okay. Period.
It's simple.
Okay.
It's very simple.
So you're not in favor of minimum wage, period?
Well, when you start talking about minimum wage hikes and this and that, it does hurt some small businesses. And the truth is not a whole lot of people are actually even paid minimum wage.
Right.
And those that are, I feel their jobs could be in jeopardy.
It is, but the problem with minimum wage, and to the point that you made, were a lot of. It's funny how they paint the picture, because they'll say no one can be a family supporter on $7 and whatever the thing was. Right. The problem with it is that most people on minimum wage, and the number to your point isn't grand, but though wasn't never supposed to be a support my family is not a career income. Right. To me, it's a welcome to the working environment income.
Starter job.
That's how I perceive it. Now, maybe I'm all wet, but that's what I think. But to your point, that says a lot of people are not necessarily being paid that. Our scale is based on that number. Right. So union wages, things like prevailing wage for how our government contracts, which we're going to touch on later, those things are set on that. And the final point I'll make before we transition to a break is that when we're raising all the numbers, not just the minimum wage. Sure. And the irony to that is that the very people that this is supposed to help, it hurts. Sure. Because we're going to have government-sponsored inflation. So a burger that now costs too much is going to cost way more. Right. And you go, wait a minute, the people that we're wanting to protect that work at mom and pop fast food restaurants somewhere, the burger's going to go up.
Right, it has to.
Whether they have a job or not's another debate, because everyone's always wants to have that debate. Yeah. I want to have the debate that says, what about inflation, which is really a hidden tax. Sure. Whenever government causes inflation, it is a hidden tax. Yes. The difference in money is what they're blowing. So, folks, we're going to go to a break, and we'll be right back.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies. Personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com. My name is Oscar Osbo Audio and Video. I've been doing it for over 14 years here in the White Lake area. Been doing the video for over 20 and radio for over 30. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I do and I can do for you. I can make commercials for much cheaper than the other guys. Video editing, life stories, music videos, and sporting events. I also been a DJ for over 30 years, so I have a DJ service that I like to bring to your next special event. So give me a call at 231-288-3580 or 231-894-0091. That's 894-0091. Also, one of my specialties is to transfer your VHS tapes, your cassette tapes, your 8-track tape, your DV tape, your VHC tape, your 8mm, your Super 8mm. How about your High 8, or maybe even your records? I can digitally transfer those, usually to be better than the originals. And to do that, I only charge $10 a DVD and $5 a CD to do the transfer. And then copies are even cheaper. So give me a call now if you have any of those things that you want done just for you. Oscar Osbo Audio and Video at 894-0091 or 288-3580. Call me today.
Are you one of the many Americans who undergo CPAP or BiPAP therapy? Replacing your supplies every 3 to 6 months is critical, as bacteria will build up and worn-out straps cause leaks. Call Allied Medical Supply Network and speak to an expert agent who will set up a schedule for your supplies to be delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today and rest easy.
Call 800-284-2512. That's 800-284-2512.
This is a national health alert from Worldwide Medical. Are you on Medicare? And do you suffer from back or knee pain? Have you tried injections, pain pills, or even had or considered surgery? If these examples apply to you or a loved one in pain, stop. There is a better way. You could qualify to receive a pain-relieving back or knee brace at little or no cost to you. You'll receive free information, free delivery, and all the insurance paperwork is handled for free. Best of all, there is little to no cost to you for the braces. Call 1-800-282-6789 to get all the details. It takes just a couple of minutes. These amazing braces have helped thousands of people in severe pain, and you may qualify to have yours delivered directly to your door at little or no cost to you. Call 1-800-282-6789 right now. This may be the most important call you make all year. That's 800-282-6789. Call now.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show with my guest today, Angela Rigas, who is a candidate for primary challenging candidate for state representative in Michigan's 86th district. Listen, Angela, when we went to break, we were talking about a 20% minimum wage hike in total, and you wouldn't have voted for that.
I would have not.
Okay. You don't think government has a role in this? Is that what I got out of what you were telling me?
Right. That's exactly correct.
Okay. What I'm going to do is kind of in between these two topics. What I'm hoping to talk about along the path today is the coming gas tax bump, okay? But I can't segue from the minimum wage hike to the gas tax bump without covering prevailing wage.
Sure.
And the reason is, and I'll tell you my position and you tell me yours, I'll be as short as I can on it. To me, you can't do a gas tax bump without first changing how Michigan contracts labor. I might have supported a gas tax bump, by the way, if they would have done everything to reinvent and use common sense, your word,
Sure.
to employ common sense on how we contract for labor, which is not part of what prevailing wage is. Prevailing wage is like the anti-common sense legislation piece.
Yeah.
So what do you think about what we're talking about?
Well, with the prevailing wage, like I'll use it as like schools as an example. In my district, we are building a second high school,
Okay.
and prevailing wage has driven up the cost of that school by about 20% with the increased labor costs.
Right.
And a lot of the employees that build the schools and work in construction are not even local, from the local communities. I would rather see businesses locally supported and work locally and bring money within our communities.
Right. Now, to me, when I look at it, to your point, it reminds me of the bridge to nowhere right now that I'm watching being built out near my residence, and it's a fascinating thing because this is they bring people in from 180 miles away and put them up at a hotel or a motel, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's a lot of people that would genuinely like to have that kind of work.
Right.
So not only are they trucking people in from who knows where, but then they're contracting them at the top of union wage. And I think you're wanting to bump my gas tax that myself and my family and you have to pay because but at the same time you won't adopt common sense business. It's kind of like how they got rid of the part-time legislation. That was kind of pushed to the wayside. You go, wait a minute. Not to get off topic, but none of these things are making Michigan strong and employing people and making it so people can afford their own health care rather than getting free insurance. Two separate issues. I don't want to get too far off the path, but all of these things are tied together in one big, huge knot that makes it tough for me and for most folks to get their head around. But so we'll go back to the minimum wage and then try to chew our way through those issues. Well, minimum wage, what do you do about wages instead of having the government legislate it?
Have the employer set the wage.
Okay.
That's a common sense idea.
Then if the employee doesn't like the wage I can pay, then they say, I'm not going to work for that.
They can get another job.
Okay, yeah. Some people say, wow, that's really hard-hearted. I happen to be with you on it, by the way, because I think that when I'm paid on my work performance and my merit, when I can come to a company and say, these are the things I can do for you, I think that I get more reward than if I come in and say, the government says you got to pay me X, Y, Z, so give me the dough.
It's just all about being in control of your own business.
Right. Self-reliance.
Yeah.
For both people, by the way, the employer and the employee.
Right. Well, going back to the gas tax briefly, if we would cut spending and make government smaller, limit government in Michigan, we wouldn't even have to ask the voters for an increased gas tax. If we were to build better roads, longer lasting roads, we would not be in the state that we are. Right. And I often feel as I'm talking to the voters, and hardly any voters ever bring up the like the roads and the repairs of the roads. Right. That's not one of their main concerns usually. Right. But if we would just budget the government like you and I budget our homes, we wouldn't be in such trouble. They raised the budget $1 billion a year on average of the last 4 years. Right. And they want more. Right. Middle class, small business families are getting hurt by these policies every day. So we have less actual population than we did 10 years ago, but somehow our social needs are significantly higher. I can't get my head around that math either. Clearly we have a problem. We do have a problem. I think we've got a problem with the administration, and I know you're a Republican, and I'm probably one by default. I can't think of the right word. I'm a Republican with all kinds of objections. I am. You're against prevailing wage. Yes. Okay. And you don't want a gas tax bump. That's ridiculous. Your opponent voted for all of the things we're talking about. Of course she did. Yeah. The House Republicans have gotten very progressive in the past few years. But listen, let's not paint with a too broad brush. And I think it's important that we stop right on that point for a second. Roughly a third of the Republican Party, led by Governor Snyder, have gotten very progressive, to use your word. Yes. They've created a very fascinating new majority. Okay, and that new majority is made up by the Democratic Party legislators, and about a third of the Republican Party. So the real Republicans, for lack of better words, have to be standing around going, wait a minute, I thought we were the majority party. Right. What the heck just happened? Right. And I say that because it's important for listeners to understand that you and I are not the outsiders saying we're not the radicals, because usually a primary challenger, like in 2004 when I was a primary challenger, it was before the Tea Party, before C4L, before any of these things. So people think, Mike, you must be way out there. I didn't think that because that was the past thought. Well, it was, but I supported the platform, so I become a platform Republican now under these new terminologies. Now, do you know offhand how many challengers we have in the state right now? I think that there's
7 viable. There may be more, but I've been watching 7 of them. I've had several of them on here. Cindy Duran has been on my
I like
show.
Cindy.
She's a very nice person.
Yeah, I like her.
But listen, I think all of them that I've had contact with. Nick Sundquist has been on here. Him and I didn't agree when he was a Libertarian Party member. We do agree now with what he's doing, that he's a primary challenger, because I think we can best serve our communities, best serve the state and people by making the Republican Party do what it says it's going to do in the primary and in convention than we are by splintering off with all these other parties. That's how I feel about it. So that's one of the reasons, by the way, that this show has spent a little bit of extra time this summer talking about primary challenges than maybe I normally would have. I genuinely believe that now is the time, more so than any other time that I've seen since I've been involved in politics, where these things are musts. We must define who we are, both as a party and as a people. One of the things I wanted to talk about, though, is not party politics. It's about families. You've got a family. I've got a family. And I've said on this show a lot of times, I don't think we can save Michigan or save America. Setting all the budget issues aside, I don't think we can save any of it unless we save the American family.
I agree.
And I'm not trying to get into the gay issue, because frankly, I don't think that's where the percentages are. I may even have a different view of that than most Republicans, including the platform Republicans have. So to me, that's a separate issue. But when I look at the 90-some% of Americans that are heterosexual, they're in straight marriages, those are the chunk I want to focus on right now, because I think while we're having all of these extraneous other silly arguments along the path, the American family itself is in some serious trouble, in my view. What do you think?
I agree. And I had touched on that earlier about education, how many broken families, and it is terrible. And you can see the decline of the decline of the American family. Most of us are blended families. I have a blended family myself. I was married before, and my husband and I, we've been married for 5 years. And sorry, and I was a single mom for a while, and it was really hard. But I had a good support around me, and I can't imagine how it must be for the single parents that don't have the strong support. But we have to put our kids first as parents.
Yeah, let's talk about divorces for a second, if we can. One of the things that we have, whenever I've had a number of people on over the couple years, one of them specifically that dealt with divorce issues, trying to find what's best for the children. Equal custody was one of the positions. I happen to be in favor of equal custody as a first stop, not the only stop. Okay, but I believe that parents need both parents. I strongly believe that. But that's not the only. I mean, if you look at it and it's not unanswerable, I think we've got an adversarial court system that is not necessarily the best place to solve a family that's in crisis's problems. But my question for you is do you think as a government entity we should be focusing on how divorces are done, whether it's no fault or all these other ideas, or should we be focused on how marriages are done, meaning what's the state's involvement in the marriage in the first place? Does the government even have a role in this topic? What do you think?
Well, I would first advocate for the kids.
Me too. Because listen, when I first got involved in politics, my very first tour of duty, if you will, or first function was as chair of a small organization called Voices for the Children of Divorce. And I used to have a lot of members very frustrated with me because they'd all stand up and my ex said, and they'd go through this big litany of what their ex. I said, stop. That sounds so stupid to me. You married this person, you slept with them for X number of years, you had kids. Now you're telling me that they're a Danubian slime devil. Okay, I don't care about those things because it makes the person saying the words sound really petty and stupid. But more importantly, it's the kids. And I would tell them the only thing this group does is say, what can we do to help the children? Because I think they need both folks, both parents.
And I too am a child of divorce. My parents divorced when I was 13 years old, and my mom left. And she took my brother. So I was split up from my only sibling at the time and living with my dad, and it was very hard. It was so hard, and he worked a lot, and he took good care of me, and I learned a lot from my dad. And it's terrible. He's been gone for 6 years already, and I can't believe the time has gone by that fast.
Yeah.
But I had a couple good aunts that really helped me.
Very,
Because
very
it's
good.
very hard for a man to raise a daughter,
Right.
Especially a teenager. I'm surprised my dad made it through those teenage years.
Yeah.
And it's hard for a woman to raise a man.
Right. True. Now, I was a single parent for a while of 4 daughters, okay? And it is a hill. But my problem with the topic of marriage and divorce, frankly, and you've helped me with the storyline a little bit, because divorce seems to beget divorce. That's what we teach our children. And listen, I'm not chastising you. I've got the same history. What I'm concerned about, though, is what we're teaching each generation. And marriage becomes more fragile and less valuable with each lesson that we teach in each generation. And so people say, okay, Mike, get off of your soapbox and tell us what the answer is. Now, to me, I think the answer is those families that can have dinner. I mean, it sounds so cliche to say, but have dinner.
Yeah.
Talk about the Constitution and what's in the news today.
Yeah.
Well, our kids don't want to hear that. Now, when I go to a restaurant, I sit around and I look at the restaurant. In fact, we were talking about this off air. You look around the restaurant, I see husbands and wives, each one of them with an iPad or an iPhone, and they're talking to somebody else that's
Right.
somewhere else.
Yep.
And the kids are staring off into space like they're alone, and they are.
Yeah.
Or the kids are also, which blows my mind, by the way, are also on their iPads or their iPhones. And I thought, why you folks even go to dinner? Now, for me, I'm 53. When I was a young person, back in the 60s, going out to dinner was a big event. And we didn't go out every other night. It was a big to-do now. I mean, it was a memorable thing, so I can still sit and talk about special trips to the big boy, if you can imagine.
Sure.
We've lost that. We've traded it for something that doesn't have the value.
Right.
Am I thinking wrong?
No, absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned like family dinners, because that's kind of I'm really hard on that at my house.
Good for you.
And, I make dinner five nights a week. I make dinner. I cook for my family, and we eat together as a family.
Right.
And that's the way it is. And it's funny because if my husband has a late lunch at work, he'll sit at the table with us.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so important, because growing up, I didn't have that.
Right.
During the years that I probably wouldn't have wanted it at the time as a teenager, but you look back at things and you really realize that you missed out. And I'm really strict on that. And, even kissing your kids before bed, and just the things that used to be considered normal.
Right.
We don't have it anymore. And I coached T-ball
Right.
with my husband. We coached our son Warner's team, and I look around and too many people in the crowd are on their iPads.
Right.
And it drives me crazy, because I'm talking with the kids, and I don't want to like single out, my team's children, because we have a lot of good parents on our kids' teams, and it was mostly kind of, the teams that we were playing that had kind of the issue, but we kept our parents involved.
Right.
And it was really great, because the kids keep looking to their parents. Like, they want to make their parents proud. And for the parents that aren't paying attention, I think it's very sad for the child.
I got to tell you, though, it's easy to get caught up in. I got to defend those people, because I'm guilty sometimes also. You get caught up in it. I do my store, I do the show, I'm involved in a number of campaigns. And so I've got a couple daughters that will, Dad, put it down. I'm not coming over if you've got your iPad. They're right. And good for them to make me pause and pay attention to my grandkids. And that sounds so upside down, but it's a world that is so easy for people, and they trade so much valuable for it, myself included. And I've gotten much, much better at it. Now there's got to be a really big problem for me to touch that when I've got grandbabies in the area. Because to your point, if you're playing T-ball and you look to see if your parent's paying attention because you just did something good, and you see they're a million miles away, it's got to make you feel about 2 inches tall.
Sure, they missed it.
Yeah, and then I wonder what effect we're having on the next generation. I look around, I see all the problems now, but I know that problems beget problems, and we're pushing ourselves a big mound to try to get over.
I wonder if the next generation will even talk in person. I mean, maybe in the future we can text each other the interviews.
I got to tell you, I have faith in the American people. I do. If I didn't think that the pendulum will swing back, I wouldn't do all the things that I do. You wouldn't be so concerned to get beat up all the time trying to be a candidate and do all the right things to support your family. If you thought it was all for naught, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
So I got to believe that the pendulum will swing back and we'll be okay.
Well, there's many more of us taking a stand. And
Yeah.
And I laugh about this every day because I'm actually very shy.
Right.
And people can't believe that I'm a shy person, but when I'm talking about something that I'm very passionate about, I have no issues. But in an ordinary day, if I didn't, really know people, I would just feel so nervous. And I remember the first few doors that I've knocked, I was just sweating. I was so nervous. And now, thousands of doors later, I just keep going in the passion, and people are very supportive of my campaign
Right.
and of my drive. They thank me for standing up. I hear it every day. Thank you for standing up.
I got to tell you, when I was a candidate a long time ago, one of the things I had the most challenge with was asking for people to support me. I really, because I'm a shy person also, and people laugh at me all the time. I'm notoriously shy. Well, I really am. I'm an introvert, and you have to push yourself beyond.
Yes.
You really do, and you get to the point where you go, okay, nobody threw tomatoes at me, and the big cane didn't pull me off, so I
Right.
guess I'll keep going. But it's a hill to climb. I just had a tough time with that. So, what do you think? Oscar, what are you telling me?
1 minute.
1 minute. When we come back, well, just to give you a little bit of prep, when we come back, I'm wanting to talk about some of my favorite topics, and we'll start with gun control.
Okay.
Gun control for me is obviously I own a gun shop. I hear arguments all the time against it, and maybe my ears pick up on it more than the average person's. But I'm alarmed at the state of where we're at on that topic, both in Michigan and on a national level. So that's where we're going to pick up, and we'll be right back, folks. Thanks.
I've made a discovery. The down-home community our grandparents loved is still here. Seriously, that's what you'll find at Renegade River in downtown Spring Lake. You might be looking for a new or used hunting rifle or something for personal defense. Maybe a DNR sport license or fishing supplies, personal and home defense, hunting, Army, Navy supplies, fishing, survival gear, and even a tools and guy stuff consignment department. You'll be greeted by low prices and quick professional service provided by shopkeeper like Hewitt. If you're not in a hurry, grab a cup of coffee and join in the conversation. Renegade River, firearms, hunting, personal protection and survival gear, going camping, or looking for emergency products. Come take advantage of the prices while meeting up with old friends and making new ones. Renegade River, next to the police station in downtown Spring Lake, or go to the website renegaderiver.com.
Attention hip replacement patients. Several metal-on-metal hip implants have been recalled, and a jury recently awarded $8.3 million to one hip replacement victim.
Metal-on-metal hip implants can cause excruciating pain and may require expensive surgery to replace. If you had a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or it needs to be removed, call the Goldwater Law Firm right now.
I'm attorney Bob Goldwater. Metal-on-metal hip replacements can be dangerous. If you have a metal-on-metal hip implant, even if it hasn't failed yet, call us right now. You may be entitled to substantial compensation.
The manufacturer of your defective hip implant should have to pay for your medical expenses and your pain and suffering.
Your time to act is quickly running out, so call us right now.
If you have a metal-on-metal hip replacement and it's been removed or is causing you problems,
call 1-800-540-9516. That's 1-800-540-9516.
Welcome back to the Mike Hewitt Show with my guest Angela Rigas and myself. When we went to break, we were talking this time. What were we talking about?
We were going to go to gun control.
Gun control. Where are you on gun control?
I do not support gun control.
Okay.
As a conservative, the Second Amendment and, defending the Constitution, I do not support any form of gun control.
Just because of the way you said that, it's always amazed me that the debate between progressives and conservatives is whether or not to support the Constitution.
Right.
I think you're spot on, but I think that's just such a fascinating statement of the times that we live in.
Yeah. when you have to
I
bring.
really do. But, there's a lot of articles and op-eds being written by progressives. And listen, by the way, I'm a Jeffersonian at heart. I passionately defend their right to say stuff I disagree with. Okay, I'm not calling them names. I'm not besmirching them. I just disagree vehemently with them. I'm a safety nut. I own a gun shop and I'm a safety nut.
Right.
I don't want nobody hurt. But at the same time, I think that the Second Amendment wasn't just a constitutional issue that we can wave around and argue about. I think it was common sense, to use your term.
Sure.
Okay?
It's very clear.
It is.
It's very clear. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. But however, we live in a society where people are not responsible for their own actions.
Right.
Parents are not responsible for their children.
Right.
They're
told not that they don't have to be responsible.
Yeah, we live in a nanny state.
They're
nanny
entitled to be
society.
not responsible.
Right.
And that's such a thing I can't get my head around that thinking. I really, really can't. If all of the areas where guns are restricted are areas where they've got high gun violence.
Exactly.
Including when we forget America for a minute and look at Russia, look at all of the places that you can point to that have high gun laws, they have gun violence. That's not an accident.
This topic really gets me fired up because it's clear, but the left do not see it, that gun control is not the answer.
Right.
You have the right to defend yourself. That is true. And the gun-free zones are
right.
the zones where criminals that have illegally obtained firearms
right.
come in and shoot. And they usually have a mental disorder.
Right.
And I don't understand how many people have mental problems. They have parents. They have neighbors. Why are we not looking out for those types of issues and actually caring for one another? But yeah, we're so shocked when someone goes in and shoots up a building full of people.
It's
in a gun-free zone.
It's a fascinating thing because part of the problem with the mental industry, the mental health community or mental health industry, is that a lot of the legislation that are supposedly were designed to protect people's rights, protect their privacy, etc. What they've done is they've caused those industries not to be able to communicate with law enforcement, not to be able to take the progressive steps that would help prevent. That's the real use of the word progressive, by the way. Helps to link up the people that need to know this person is dangerous. Those things are alarming. But listen, this is a short segment, and so I have to move on a little bit. I want to talk about money. I think a lot of folks believe that politicians or people that are candidates are rich. Are you rich?
I am not rich.
Not rich?
I'm not. I'm a middle class.
A fellow that I've got a lot of respect for a while back, in fact, on this show, he was a guest of mine, was talking, and we were talking about legislators that are not well funded, people that are elected, so not candidates, people that are elected, that are really not well funded. You look in their campaign finance account, which everyone can pull up at the Secretary of State website. You can see what all of the legislators have in their their campaign finance fund, at least at the time of the last filing date. And so if you look at the ones that are really genuinely serving constituents, they tend to not have a whole bunch of money in their fund, okay? But if you look at the ones that are really, really married up deeply with the lobbyists in Lansing, by the way, I support lobbyists being lobbyists, but I support legislators representing their constituents more than lobbyists.
Sure.
But the ones that are married up to the lobbyists, they're really well funded and hard to beat. So it's kind of like this unspoken incumbency protection act.
Sure.
Because it takes, I can tell you from marketing, it takes about 60 impressions to get somebody to remember your name, much less the issues.
Right.
Okay? So it takes a boatload of money to run a political campaign. And I don't know that a lot of folks realize what all goes into the mechanics of that. So I guess first off, do you have a whole bunch of endorsements?
I have endorsements from people.
Okay.
I have not been endorsed.
Those are the ones I want to hear about.
Those are the only ones I care about. And
Yep.
to be honest with you, I've met with, I've been on candidate interviews for different organizations. And it's hard for me to sit in these interviews when I know I do not see eye to eye with anything that they want me to do. And just an example, a illegal immigrants, or as they call, undocumented workers, as they called them.
I think Michigan, I saw an article in Michigan, I think it was a Detroit Free Press that referred to them as undocumented residents.
Oh, they're residents now?
That was my favorite
Oh,
one so
okay.
far. Yep.
Well, they wanted me to promise that I would do things to help illegals.
Right.
I call them illegals because they are illegal.
Yep.
It's very clear. And, or to, kind of turn the cheek the other way as far as any sort of illegal activity. And that was early on in the campaign, and that was when I realized I don't want any part of this.
Right.
This is why I'm running. I'm running against this.
Right.
So I do not take endorsements from the big corporations, the big organizations. The only endorsements I'm interested in are the endorsements of the voters.
Okay.
I want to work for the voter.
Right.
I don't want to have sponsorship stickers all over my clothing. I'm working for the ordinary people of Michigan.
Right.
And the money, as you know, always comes with strings. And I will never be a puppet.
It always does.
I will never, ever be a puppet.
Yeah, I have to take, and I'm not trying to get you to join with me in some of these things I say, because I'm not going to be a candidate. I'm not a candidate, thank goodness. Michigan Chamber of Commerce, who once upon a time endorsed me when I was a candidate. I've always liked them. I've always supported business. But I'm really getting an education in the last 3 or 4 years. So an example is you talk about illegal immigration, and Dave Agema was on my show. In fact, him and Representative Hooker, Tom Hooker, were both on the show, and the topic that day was illegal immigration. I call it an illegal foreign insurgency, and I get people upset with me when I use that term. 5 or 10 or 15 people are illegal immigrants. 20 million people is an illegal foreign insurgency, especially when it's government-sponsored, be it their government or our government. And I believe that. I mean, some of the stats we talked about that day, 150,000 of them, plus or minus, are here in Michigan. Right. And if they pooled themselves into a community, they'd be the second largest city in Michigan. Those things scare me. Not for the people, but for the impact of the economy it's going to have.
Right.
I don't want to pay for it.
No, absolutely not.
But listen, at the same time, I don't blame them. If I lived in some of the places that their governments created, I don't know if I'd want to be a patriot and cause a revolution in their government, which would probably be the state of mind I'd have, or I would flee with my children if I felt I couldn't have an impact. So I don't necessarily blame them. But
they have 2 options. Okay.
The other one's legal.
Well, coming to America legally.
Legally, right.
Or taking a stake in your nation.
Right. Yeah, I agree with these things. Now,
is it just easier to just sneak in?
Yeah, I got to tell you, though, a lot of these folks are very, very dirt poor. We've already talked about what it's like to be a candidate. It's very expensive. I can empathize with them. I genuinely can. But listen, my family came in. We talked about the boat that begins my show. That's the boat. That's the boat. My family came over in 1881. I'm not opposed to immigration. I'm an immigrant technically, or at least by generational. But at the same time, just the sheer numbers are staggering. I think it worked out to like 60,000 a month for 28 years, and you go, stop it. That's just insane.
Yeah.
To the point where it equaled, I think, either three or four states in total population, Great Lake region states. Overwhelming. Dave Agema, by the way, is the person that told me that rule that suggests the person that's doing the job of the constituents may not have a big political war chest while the other person may.
It's exactly true.
Yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Dave. I think you know Dave, don't you?
I do know Dave.
Yep. Tell me what you know about Dave. Are you a supporter of Dave?
I am a supporter of Dave Agema. I've supported him for a few years since I've known him. And when I first met Dave, I was very impressed. He's got a very strong presence.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a wonderful speaker, and I have a lot of respect for him. He sticks to his principles.
Yeah, he's not much for decision by committee.
No, he's not afraid to stand up for what he believes in.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks, when they think, gosh darn, why did he come up? But you get, as a fighter pilot, you're making a decision at Mach 3 at 5,000 feet. And you're not saying, does anyone have any different views before I do this? Yeah. You got to make a decision. And that's the kind of mentality that he's adopted, and I'm extremely impressed by it.
I am too.
I understand he supports you.
That is correct. I do have Dave's endorsement.
Yep, that's very big. That's kind of where I was going at with this. Good for you.
I wanted you to say it because I
Did
like
you?
to hear it. Yeah.
I don't blame you. I consider
Yeah, Dave's a
Dave-
great guy.
Yeah, I consider Dave a good friend. He's a very, very nice man. Dave endorsed me once upon a time also, and it was one of the lessons. In fact, I've talked about it on the show without Dave in the past. He met with me. We had a breakfast, and his question was, okay, your campaign fund is low. You're out of money, and you need to do X, Y, Z. What do? He said, then you've got some organization like, he named one, I won't name them. They come to you and say, all I need you to do is vote this, and just this one vote, just this one time, and I'll max you out. What do you say? He says, you have to understand something. It may be a lot of pressure. You may be getting calls from the governor. Wait a minute. Could that possibly be? Could the governor and I really, we're both Republicans. How could it be we differ? You may be getting calls from the governor. You may be getting all kinds of pressure from your peers, but you don't agree. What do when the money that you need is there?
You don't need it that bad.
You don't need it that bad. So I
No.
can't make a deal with the devil.
Nope.
I can be a pragmatist. I can make trades. I understand that when you've got multiple people, we're not all going to agree. Then I go, okay, this part I can deal with. I'll accept that. Let's move on. But some things aren't for sale.
Right.
Am I wrong?
You are 100% correct. And that's why I have not taken any of this money. The only donations I've received from my campaign are from the hardworking taxpayers like myself.
When I look at campaign pictures for you, I see it looks like an army of people.
Yeah. I have a
Honest.
lot of great support.
Listen, what makes me smile and what makes me bring that up is that usually a primary challenger has a very tough time getting personal endorsements from people like Dave Agema, getting just regular folks to join in, because it's hard to believe that a primary challenger of an incumbent has an opportunity for victory. So there's a lot of people that go, yeah, I really don't like your opponent, but I don't know that you've got the word I hate the most in politics is I don't know if you're a viable candidate. I hate that word with a passion.
I have not heard, no one said that to me.
No, and I don't think they would, but I think that's how Lansing thinks about politics.
Well,
That's not how constituents, that's not how voters and citizens don't think that way. The folks in Lansing do.
right. The folks in Lansing are wrong.
They really are. I mean, you know what they do is they take away the power from the folks that the people that are going to vote for you. They get robbed when Lansing causes someone else to have an opportunity greater than you,
Right.
just because of their political convenience,
Right.
which is really what we're talking about.
Well, I think my campaign has resonated well with so many people because I am not a politician. I preach we need to bring back common sense to Lansing. We need to limit government. We need to cut taxes. It's common sense.
It really is.
And for House Republicans to support things like Common Core, Medicaid expansion, the senior pension tax, the Detroit bailout, the gas tax, the minimum wage hike. I've had a few people say to me, well, I vote Republican.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm sorry, ma'am. These are Republicans.
Yeah. 2/3 of the Republicans agree with that person, 1/3 didn't and joined with the Democrats, and that's unfortunate. Tell me, we're almost out of time. How can a constituent find you real quick?
You can find me on Facebook, Angela Rigas for state rep. I'm on Twitter at VoteAngela, and I'll give out my email address too. It's angelarigas@gmail.com.
Very
If you'd like
nice.
to get in touch with me for volunteer opportunities or even to host a yard sign.
Very nice. Angela,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much. Folks,
Thank
we'll
you.
see you next week.
Thank you.
Brought to you by Renegade River.
My name is Oscar Osbo, Oscar Osbo Audio and Video. I've been doing it for over 14 years here in the White Lake area. Been doing the video for over 20 and radio for over 30. I'd like to tell you a little bit about what I do and I can do for you. I can make commercials for much cheaper than the other guys. Video editing, life stories, music videos, and sporting events. I also been a DJ for over 30 years, so I have a DJ service that I like to bring to your next special event. So give me a call at 231-288-3580 or 231-894-0091. That's 894-0091. Also, one of my specialties is to transfer your VHS tapes, your cassette tapes, your 8-track tape, your DV tape, your VHC tape, your 8mm, your Super 8mm. How about your High 8, or maybe even your records? I can digitally transfer those, usually to be better than the originals. And to do that, I only charge $10 a DVD and $5 a CD to do the transfer. And then copies are even cheaper. So give me a call now if you have any of those things that you want done just for you. Oscar Osbo Audio and Video at 894-0091 or 288-3580. Call me today.